Welcome to the Gwinnett County Public Library's Community Conversations. Our partner for this series is the Gwinnett Remembrance Coalition. I am Ron Goche. I'm a Youth Services Community Partnerships Manager with the Gwinnett County Public Library. Tonight's moderator is Dr. Paul Grant. He is an associate professor of political science in the School of Liberal Arts at Georgia Gwinnett College. He teaches American government, state and local government, and Georgia politics courses. His published and presented research topics include race, ethnicity, and politics, legislative studies, and state government and politics. Dr. Grant studied the social, political, and economic climate of South Africa 10 years after the end of apartheid on a Fulbright Hayes Fellowship. He is a member of the GGC Sustainability Committee and co-founder of the GGC Community Microphone. So Dr. Grant, thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Ron. And I want to welcome everyone once again to a community conversation. And of course, this month, with it being Black History Month, we selected a topic that's very much related. Some of you may be old enough to remember the lines in that wonderful Sam Cooke song, came out around 1960, Wonderful World. You know the line I'm talking about, right? Don't know much about history. Well, he was probably speaking for most of us. There's just so much history we don't know. And this is especially true of African-American history, particularly because so much of it is tragic racial history in the United States. Many of us are just learning details about our nation's lynching history, and a lot of this work has been exposed by the Peace and Justice Memorial in Montgomery, Alabama. Locally, there have been programs on the 1906 Atlanta race riot, and similar kinds of racial violence against African Americans during or around the time of Red Summer. We're learning more about Oscarville and Forsyth County, learning more about Morris Ford Bridge outside of Monroe, Georgia. And in addition, recently there have been a number of books and documentaries revealing the US government's efforts to exclude African Americans from benefiting from popular programs such as Social Security, the GI Bill of Rights, and Department of Agriculture programs. However, we've also been exposed to stories of the resilience in the African American community and how Blacks excelled in so many fields, such as mathematics, science, government, education, the arts, and athletics, in spite of the obstacles placed before them. However, today there are some political leaders concerned about society knowing about African American history, American history. Georgia and Florida, for example, are among a number of states passing legislation against teaching concepts deemed divisive. This includes bans on teaching critical race theory, which is generally taught in college and law schools anyway, the 1619 Project, books by noted scholars, and even advanced placement African American history. These legislators emphasize they are concerned about how white students may feel after being exposed to some parts of this history. But we know the very nature of education, knowledge, and understanding are divisive. Only through continual and fearless sifting and winnowing can knowledge be created and truth revealed. And this is what we learned from University of Wisconsin President Charles Kendall Adams way back in 1894. Some of these political leaders and their supporters may be concerned that revealing the nation's dark, true racial history threatens the American legacy of being a nation that promotes freedom, equality, justice, merit, and is always exceptional. It does. But it also illustrates the capacity of our nation to evolve and improve. My grandmother used to often say, when you know better, you do better. Yeah. Given that our nation only began to employ the talents of the majority of its citizens in just the last 55 years or so, understanding and acknowledging how far we've come could help us imagine how far we can go by fully understanding the history of what has held us back. So it would seem wise and even fitting during this Black History Month to continue to explore African American history as it is wholly American history. Rather than restrict the study, we should embrace the exposure to an analysis of Black history and preserve it to make the United States a more perfect union. To this end, we have several engaging guests representing a variety of organizations and institutions actively preserving African American history right here in Gwinnett County. Let me go ahead and introduce some of our panelists. This evening we have Mrs. Ann Bender, and she is a member of the Gwinnett County Historical Restoration and Preservation Board. As Vice President in 2021, she worked alongside Chairman Marlene Taylor Crawford to assist the Gwinnett County Remembrance Coalition in their endeavor to honor Mr. Charles Hale. Mr. Hale had been lynched in the Lawrenceville Square in 1911. Her work involved helping to coordinate the city of Lawrenceville and Gwinnett County on two events. On June 19th, the soil collection ceremony and the historic marker installation in January of 2022. We are also joined this evening by Deacon Gregory Bailey. Deacon Bailey serves as the Director of Community and Social Service Ministries for Salem Missionary Baptist Church of Little Bern, a church founded by his paternal grandparents in 1834. Mr. Bailey holds dual degrees in the area of sociology and social work and speech from the University of West Georgia. He also has a master's from Georgia State University in sociology and gerontology. Mr. Bailey joins us this evening because he manages Salem's Heritage Hall, which is in which he is leading its expansion plans. But we're happy to have him too. Also, we have Dr. Kevin Collins, and Dr. Collins is the acting Associate Director for Health and Equity in the Office of Smoking and Health and the National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promoting at the CDC. He advises the director and oversees the adoption and implementation of health equity principles in aspects of the division's work. He joins us today as the co-chair of the Gwinnett Remembrance Coalition. We are also happy to have Mr. Perry McClendon, who grew up on Neely Farm in Pinckneyville, which of course is now a part of Peachtree Corners. He is the great nephew of Perry P.P. Nesbitt. And he is also, and you correct me if I'm getting this wrong, the great nephew of Clara B. Nesbitt, who was a noted educator in Gwinnett County. He serves as a deacon in the church that was founded by his family, Central Baptist Church, excuse me. And he is a double retiree. He is a retiree from two great American institutions, the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Post Office. He is all, amen, and thank you for your service. He is also a local business owner, and he joins us as his family historian for the Stevens and Nesbitt family. And finally, and I'm not sure if she was able to join us, but she may be joining us soon. There might be some connectivity issues. Mrs. Ruby Neal. And Mrs. Neal was born and raised in Tacula. She's a graduate of Hooper Renwick High School in 1956. She attended Fort Valley and Clark College in Atlanta. She has worked in several capacities in Gwinnett County educational and medical institutions. She is also a member of Salem Missionary Baptist Church, and is involved in numerous Gwinnett County community organizations. This evening, we are hoping to hear from her discuss Hooper Renwick's history as well as its future, as she is actively involved in the future plans of that historic school. And with that, let's hear from our panelists. Thank everyone for your patience. Let me start with Mrs. Bender. And again, welcome, Anne.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your work with the Gwinnett County Historic Preservation Committee.
It's where to start. I was appointed by Commissioner Kirkland Carden in 2020 when he and I had a conversation about the Confederate monument that was in Lawrenceville Square, and we were in agreement that the thing needed to go. And after some other conversations, he asked me if I would be interested in sitting on the Gwinnett County Historical Restoration Preservation Board. And I had no idea there was even such a thing. I mean, that's kind of ignorant of the situation, but I did join, and it has been the most amazing couple of years. We've done some really wonderful work, working with the Gwinnett Coalition. Remembrance Coalition has been some of the best work I've been involved with. It's just been fantastic. It's emotional. Opening up these conversations, it's really, really important work. And remembering Charles Hale, who was lynched in the Lawrenceville Square in 1911, people didn't know. It's forgotten history, and it should never be forgotten. So that's really what I've been all about with the board. We're going to continue working with the coalition. There's other work that they would like to do, and I'd like to see that through. We're also working with the county and the Livesey family to make sure that the Promised Land project goes according to how the family would like to see it done. It's important that the family is very involved in the restoration and the history of the house and the property, because it's a living community.
And say a little more about that for viewers who may not be familiar.
The Livesey McGuire's house was a plantation house, and it was purchased during the end of the Civil War by the Liveseys, and it has been the center of the community for generations now. And it was purchased by Gwinnett County, and the plan is to make it into a museum, and it really should be it needs to represent the family, the living family that is in the community. And we're working to be sure that the community is very involved in the project.
Excellent.
So that will be what I will be working for with the county.
Okay, excellent.
To try to make sure that can be happening.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned the Gwinnett Remembrance Coalition. Let me kind of switch over to Kevin, Dr. Collins. Tell us a little bit about the Gwinnett Remembrance Coalition. How was it formed, and what have been some of the accomplishments?
Well, first off, let me say good evening. Evening to you and
Thank you.
my fellow panelists. It's a pleasure and honor to be here with you. The Gwinnett Remembrance Coalition is a very young coalition. We just started approximately 3 years ago. We held our first meeting, and a month later, we were all quarantined. So we've had that challenge of dealing with COVID as you try to develop and build something new. We started a group of us, really led by a gentleman by the name of Steve Babb, a co-worker of mine, resident here in Gwinnett County, knew of my history. I have a family history with lynching, and that rumor is that my grandfather left East Texas running from a lynch mob, and then he was later murdered in Kansas City 40 years or so later. Anyhow, he knew of my family history and knew my strong connection to lynching. And Steve was someone who really just had a passion for social justice. He knew I shared that passion with him. And so we decided that we wanted to get a group of like-minded citizens together and see if we could start a group, a coalition or something to make a change right here where we live. And so we came together. That's what started the Gwinnett Remembrance Coalition. Several of us made a trip, initial trip down to Montgomery, visited with the folks at EJI, the Equal Justice Initiative, and wanted to bring back some of the principles and the work that they were doing or having done across the country and have it done here and do some of the stuff here in Gwinnett County. So we began to, you've already heard Ms. Bender talk about recognizing the lynching that took place in Gwinnett County, and have the permanent marker put in place. We did the soil collection exercise, but we also wanted to do something for youth as well. So EJI had a essay competition that we could bring back to Gwinnett County. We worked with Gwinnett County Public School System for the high school, all the high schools in Gwinnett County, and in order to have this social justice essay competition. The EGI offered a $5,000 scholarship to the top 3 winners of that competition. But Gwinnett County, we ended up having so many entrants, and the quality was such that they ended up doubling the award, and we ended up awarding scholarships of $10,000, a total of $10,000 to 10 students. So we're working on other initiatives. In fact, on February 24th, we're going to have another bus that we're partnering with the county, and we're going to have a bus that we're going to go back to the Montgomery and visit the lynching museum there in Montgomery as well. And so we still have a few seats there, and we have other initiatives that we're planning to roll out as well. We've had some wonderful partnerships with you and folks at the library, the Gwinnett County Library. And so we're just getting started, but we're small but mighty, as we like to say. You know, if you have it in your heart to do it, you're going to see to it that it gets done. I'll stop there and we'll go from there if you.
Well, that was quite thorough, and I certainly appreciate it. And I will have some follow-up questions, but
sure.
Let me ask Deacon Bailey about the historic Salem Missionary Baptist Church. If he could tell us just a little bit about its history, and then pivot to the fine work in historic preservation that he's leading at the Heritage Hall. Deacon Bailey.
Thank you so much, and good evening to everyone. And I will try to encapsulate it as best I can, for it is a a very large history. Salem is the oldest African-American institution in Gwinnett County. We date ourselves to 1834. The Carroll family, which is the plantation where Salem started, are first in the 1820s census, living in what was then called the Berkshire Militia District because Lilburn did not exist. We see them in 1834 building 6 buildings, 5 dwellings for their 26 enslaved Africans and 1 meeting house. That meeting house would become the Salem Missionary Baptist Church. They allowed their enslaved to go to that meeting house once a month. The word got out and people thought it would be shut down, but the opposite happened. Other owners of people of African descent in the Berkshire Militia District, and even all the way up to the DeKalb County line, started allowing their enslaved to come to the meeting house once a month. That's where my family, and also my cousin Perry McClendon is on here, that's where his family come in, which were the Stevens. And we can date my great-grandparents, Perry's great-great-grandparents, to about 1840, coming to the meeting house at Salem. It lasted until emancipation. And emancipation, as was the case, they became sharecroppers and actually occupied property where Heritage Hall now stands. Won't go into a lot of the history, but there was some moving, went to downtown Lilburn, moved back to where our church is now. We purchased Heritage Hall, the building, in 2000. It was formerly a stained glass manufacturing company. Prior to that, it was built as a Gwinnett County farmers market. Now, interesting about Salem quickly is that unlike every other city in Gwinnett County, Lilburn does not have an African-American community that dates back to slavery. Every other city does. My mother was from Decula. I could date my family Decula to 1830 in the Rabbit Hill Road community. Race relations were so terrible in Lilburn that not necessarily lynched, but my father's eldest brother came back from World War I and was beaten because he had on the World War I uniform.
Right.
2 communities were destroyed. There was a community around Salem Church and a community around Five Forks Trickham. There are actually 2 other churches that did not last, but Salem lasted in spite of the odds. From about 1958 to 1980, there was only 1 African-American family in the city of Lilburn, Georgia. Church stayed. So we in Heritage Hall honor, recognize, remember all that our people have gone through. Because it is a property where our church was first formally organized as the Salem Baptist Church of God right after emancipation. My background is actually a mural of our Heritage Hall, which is a picture of all the buildings that we've ever occupied from the slave cabin to my left. Heritage Hall houses our history. We have written record. Our oldest written record is 1886, excuse me. Is 1886. We have 100-year-old furniture that our people have kept. We have music, we have choir rolls, but COVID allowed us to redo it and do it more professionally with some professional consultants like the Atlanta History Center, the Georgia Archives, and Heritage Hall will become a regional museum for North Georgia. In it, will we not only highlight Salem history, but we'll highlight African-American history. For example, there's a wall dedicated to education. Prior to Hooper Renwick, the churches operated schools in what was called the Jeans school system, where the government will pay a small amount of money, the church would match those funds, the teacher would come and teach at Salem or teach at the schools during the school year. The first teacher at Salem School was Mr. Hooper from Hooper Renwick.
Yes.
Clara Nesbitt was a teacher at Salem School, along with her sister, Dixon Nesbitt, along with her brother-in-law, Frank Stevens. We're going to have a wall for the Great Migration to talk about all of our members who left. And interestingly enough, our members went to the north. They went to Long Island, New York. They went to Ohio, Dayton, Cleveland. They went to Chicago. But we also have some members and some family who moved as far away as Sioux City, Iowa.
Wow.
In the Great Migration.
Mhm.
All those things will be highlighted in Heritage Hall. Actually, on the 26th of this month will be our sneak preview, where we have a ribbon cutting. Every month we have a lecture series that will chronicle our journey as a people from Africa to where we are today. The grand opening will be in June and will culminate at our 189th church anniversary in October.
That's outstanding and really good news. And I'm sure you'll let everybody know how they can attend these events.
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to attending myself. This is great. Well, Mr. McClendon,
Yes,
let me speak to you. And we've had some good conversations even prior to this evening.
yes, yes.
But I do want to, welcome you and hear about your historic family in Gwinnett County. Why don't you, tell the people who are watching a little bit about the significance of the Stevens Nesbitt family in Gwinnett County and why the name is so well known by so many people.
Well, good evening, everyone, and I am really grateful and thankful to be a part of this panel this afternoon. Well, my great-great-grandfather, P.P. Nesbitt, was born in 1857, okay? It is believed that the owners over at the Nesbitts over across the Chattahoochee River, which is another set of Nesbitts, and they spell it with two T's. We spell out with one T's. We believe that we were, my family, the early family members were slaves of them, okay? And once emancipation came forth, my grandfather moved, either purchased and began to purchase small land as he sharecropped, and up until he owned 144 acres out there in the Peachtree Corners area. I think he owned almost, I guess, up to the Chattahoochee River, which is, I guess, from beginning up there, I guess, at Spalding Drive and Metlock, I guess. I know we owned a little country store there. We didn't actually own it, but we owned the land, and we allowed the store, a white family, a white gentleman, to rent the property and operate a store on our property there. My grandfather was known for his he was known for his barbecue. He was known for his sharecropping as well. Back in the early years, he had 3 sons and 4 daughters. And of course, as soon as the sons got grown, they all moved away. And the daughters were there, and they were the ones who did what was required around, the farmhouse or a home place and everything. All of the daughters were educators, either in some type of profession, either a hairdresser or teachers. Okay. On my grandmother's side, her sister's husband was a blacksmith in the city of Norcross. And I believe he ran that up until probably around about the 70s. Okay. Yes. It's actually downtown. Well, they eventually sold the property to the city or someone there. My grandfather was known for his barbecue. Okay. I was told that, and I shared the story with you earlier today.
Yes,
that
you did. Please share it.
They would come and pick him up in the afternoon, early afternoon, and take him back up to Forsyth County, while he would barbecue all night, either in a barn or something like that, and stay there. And then the next day they would bring him back to his place where he lived. We were known as out of that family came one of his daughters started a Sunday school in Pinckneyville, but later some land was awarded to them, was set aside by the family, and they started what was called Central Baptist Church, which was in the city of Norcross. The church was destroyed by fire in I think somewhere in 1939 and so forth. And they rebuilt the church a little bit down the street. That structure, much of that structure still stands, but it was sold in 2001. And then another congregation bought it and they have renovated. So you cannot really see what the church really looked like. But the church that is standing there is a part of what my grandfather helped build back in 1941, I believe. 1941. Our church has been known for great ministers coming through. We've had a lot of ministers, but they always went on to be outstanding in other areas. One of the things that in my family, the Nesbitt family, where we were close to the Kings. The Kings would often come out during the summertime back in the 40s and so forth, and they would come out and have enjoy the barbecue, enjoy the fellowship and everything. And so that was how my family was connected with them, and also the Dobbs family as well on my grandmother's side. I don't know what else I can say at this point.
Well, you said a great deal, but I think the question that a lot of people have, I know it's one I have, is to what do you attribute, and your family called him PP, right?
Right.
His success in the segregated South in the early 1900s, late 1800s, amassing this amount of land, being able to rent it out to a white business owner, and have that kind of success in those circumstances.
I think one of the things is that they grasped the importance of education. That's why I believe his daughters were educators, except for one. I noticed that I found some of his books that he had. I think one is back 1902 is when it was printed. Okay, so one of the things was education. And of course, his one of his daughters, Clara, was very big on education for African Americans. Okay. Again, she was a teacher in the Gwinnett County. She also traveled all around doing segregation teaching in other areas, all the way up to Rome, Georgia, Beaufort, Georgia, and around. But I think the biggest thing was that him learning to read, and I don't know how that education came about at that time, but learning to read and pushing his children to acquire an education so they could advance themselves, so they could be professionals more than what was going on at the time.
I see. I think your story and Deacon Bailey's story, and of course you all are in the same family, does
Yes.
speak to this resilience that I spoke of at the beginning of our program in the African American community to work hard and succeed in spite of, right? And I've heard stories, and I guess Deacon Bailey, I think you were the one who mentioned the challenge, or maybe actually it might have been you, Kevin, that spoke to I guess a member of the family who was a World War I veteran. Was that you, Kevin? Or that's Deacon Bailey?
I did. Yes.
Okay, yeah. And these are stories that again, a lot of people just aren't aware of because it just isn't taught. You know, and so often we know that the history of Tulsa and Rosewood, I mentioned what happened in Atlanta. So often when you have families like, you know, Deacon Bailey, yours, and Mr. McClendon, you know, and what PB was able to accomplish, those are usually the first people who are attacked, right? Those who are working hard, trying to pursue the American dream. Historically, those were the people who were the biggest targets. So it's just, again, it's important that we share this history because again, so many people are not aware. Now, I don't know if Mrs. Neal was able to join us today. I know, looks like she just popped up. Mrs. Neal, can you hear us? There you are, Mrs. Neal.
Okay. Yes.
Great. Thank you for joining us. I'm so glad you were able to make it.
Thank you.
And your timing is perfect.
Good.
I want you to tell us and those who are able to view the program, your experiences being a student at Hooper Renwick School. You said, I see you graduated in 1956. It was still basically a segregated school. Please tell us a little bit about that history and then tell us about what you're doing now.
I certainly will. But first, I'd like to say good evening to everybody. And I would also like to tell the group that I am a descendant of a slave. My great-great-grandmother was a slave in Decatur. She was brought in Virginia and brought back to Decatur. And she had she had 6 children. One of her children was my great-great-grandfather. And he lived in the Wynn House. Everybody knows about the Wynn House in Decatur, I guess. But in the Wynn House is the location where Gwinnett County government first started. But you won't see my grandfather's name mentioned in any of that history. So I just wanted you to know that I am a descendant of that part of slavery. I am Ruby Neal, and I, as he said, I am a graduate of the Hooper Renwick High School in Lawrenceville, Georgia. Hooper Renwick High School started in 1951. Prior to Hooper Renwick, I attended elementary school in Decatur, Georgia, Mount Zion Methodist Church, where we had an elementary school. I went there and graduated from the 7th grade. As a matter of fact, I graduated from the 7th grade twice because my teacher the county had started discussing consolidating all those smaller elementary schools, and she was trying to keep that school there. So she did not allow my 7th grade class to graduate that first year. But the next year, we graduated and we came into Lawrenceville to the Hooper building, the 12-room brick building that was opened in 1951. And I graduated from that school in 1956. Right now, that school has been saved as a historical site for Gwinnett County. In that building, it's going to be a themed library with a bit of the history of Hooper Renwick throughout. Now, during the time when I went to Hooper Renwick, I came from, as I said, the elementary school in Decatur, Mount Zion, and we walked to school many, many miles every day to get to our classroom. And then in 51, when the Hooper Renwick School opened, the county allotted 2 school buses to the Black students because they consolidated all of those elementary schools except for Hull in Duluth. Hull remains an elementary school. So getting on a school bus, riding a school bus, it was a thrill and an excited time because we didn't ride anywhere. We walked everywhere we went. But these 2 school buses was given to Hooper Renwick, and they went all over Gwinnett County, bringing students into Hooper Renwick. Now, I do understand that there was another bus in Norcross area who brought students from that area into a location in Gwinnett County. They got off that bus and got on one of these 2 first allotted buses I'm speaking of, and they brought those students into Hooper Renwick. Now, as I said, walking to school every day in all kinds of weather and walking long, long miles, getting on the school bus coming to Lawrenceville, we were in heaven. I mean, it was a big move up for us. We had And the school was very small. It was elementary and high school, and there was like less than 500 students in the entire building. The 12-room building that was there, which was super. It had 12 classrooms, 2 bathrooms, a principal's office, and a library. That was what it was. Nothing else.
Mrs. Neal, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I have a question for you.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
Yes, so you said there were about 500 students?
That was less than, so it seemed like it was 490 something. I don't
Okay.
have that number in front of
Okay,
me,
no,
but
no,
I
that's
do
fine.
have that.
So tell me about the community that was
Mhm.
created within the school between those African-American teachers and administrators and the students.
Oh, it was wonderful. Those teachers were really, really interested in us as students. They were just like family, and they treated us like good. They treated us very good, and they visited the homes of the students. I mean, it was just a community of family type relationships, and they were really interested in us. And of course, we had a lot less to work with as far as getting our education. You know, the books and the programs that we had. It was nowhere near what the white kids had, but they made it good for us. They were really, really good, and that was a big plus for us. And we made good friends because there were just a handful of students from each community. And most of them had the same situation I had as far as walking to school and having little or nothing to deal, to work with. So we were just a big family of people. Even we were all in one building, the high school and the elementary school. So we were just family, and it was a good experience. And we really, really did have good times together. Wonderful.
Well, thank you for sharing that because again, this is probably a history that a lot of people are not aware of. And this is often what I've heard, right? And this kind of, again, speaks to the resilience of, the Black community going through these very difficult times of segregation, but yet it was a very close community where people felt supported and, everybody was, everyone's family member.
Absolutely.
Right. So I thank you for sharing that and sharing a little bit about the future of the school. We're down to about the last 13 minutes. This time is going by so quickly. And I think we've all learned so much. You all are doing such outstanding work in the community. And again, it often comes down to average people in the community working, doing what they can to make a difference. And it's often not seen or acknowledged, but I am so glad that a number of you here have been acknowledged for the service that you've been giving in this area of historic preservation, in this case specifically, the African-American community. We do want to try to leave a little time for questions, but let me just once again hear what people hope the future looks like in terms of the work that they're doing, just briefly. And then if there are people who have questions, we can open that up. Mrs. Bender, why don't you start?
I hope that the Gwinnett County Historic Restoration Preservation Board continues working closely with the community. Prior to Marlene Taylor Crawford's chairwomanship, the county really ran those meetings, and the board members, the first meeting I went to, I was just like, I don't know what I signed up for. This is ridiculous. We're just sitting there silently. And then, once she took charge, everything changed. She ran those meetings and we got amazing amounts of things done. We have had a lot of questions answered by the county staff. More information needs to be disseminated to the community than just how much money is being spent on this project and that project and what's happening. It really is much more important to get the community involved. You know, we've had Miss Ruby come, we've had Dr. Teresa Livesey come and make a presentation about the Promised Land, which was amazing. You know, the communities that have been in this county for as generations, it's amazing. And that history does need to be told. And the more we can open up the museum, like the Hooper Renwick, will be hopefully fantastic right there in Lawrenceville. But in Centerville, where the Promised Land is, it's everything needs to be shared, and that's the only way it can happen is conversations and community involvement. So I guess when you're saying what you want me to say is that's my hope, that the board will continue pushing the conversation.
Okay. Dr. Collins?
Thank you. We see the future, first off, is building on some of the things that we've already started. As I mentioned earlier, we had the essay competition. We want to continue to work with the youth as a way to bring history to life for them. That's what the essay competition started off being. We want to do another round of the essay competition, but we want to go further. So we're having some talks now, some plans developing, where hopefully you will see us continuing to work with the youth, but not just with essays. You know, we understand that our kids are into the performing arts, they're into a bunch of other things. So we want to include all of that as a way for them to express what history means to them, what the social justice means to them. What does it mean to be a Gwinnettian now? So that's sort of one of the things that you can expect. The other thing is we have some other programs that we're working with. You heard mentioned about the Hooper Winrick Museum. We're looking forward to partnering there, and we're going to have some efforts there. Our soil collection and the lynching piece that we've done will be maintained there permanently, is the way that we're setting up plans. And we have other plans that are still under the development, but please know that our overall plan is to continue to build on things, but also to recognize the diversity that exists within this county. I know this is a Black History Month program, but we have recent immigrants from all over the world here in Gwinnett County. The school tells you that there's over 60 languages spoken.
Right.
So we have people from all over the world that are going through their own version of social justice. Sure. And we are trying to take an active role in shaping what today can be, what tomorrow can be. So I'll stop there in the interest of time.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Deacon Bailey.
I think the future holds for us, hopefully, partnerships. And I think we're all in this together. I think our goal is to tell our story so it becomes our story. That our story becomes everybody's story. And things that open people's eyes. You know, for example, I'm sitting again in front of the mural. When I tell the story of the church with the tall white steeple, people are amazed because race relations was so terrible in Milburn that when they tore it down, they found 2 cases of dynamite.
Wow.
Someone had planned to bomb the church. Last week, I had the opportunity to go to Lilburn Middle and speak to the students. I took with them 4 books, reading, writing, arithmetic, and another reading book from Salem School in the 1920s to let our young people know where we've come from. So our goal is to become a regional museum, absolutely. To tell the history of North Georgia, absolutely. But to let people know that we have a collective story to tell.
Well, thank you. And Mr. McClendon, my question is a little more specific for you, but basically, how do you plan to preserve this great family history of the Stevens and the Nesbitts as a family historian?
Right. Thank you. Most recently, there was a book published which talks about, it's called Peachtree Corners. And in that book, it incorporates the Nesbitt family, their contribution to that community. And Peachtree Corners, the early foundation, the relationship between Blacks and whites back during that time. And also there was a street that was named after P.P. Nesbitt, which was dedicated in January 23 this year, recognizing the contribution and also how that family had deep roots in Peachtree Corners, that not only just was within the boundaries, but went beyond that. Like I said, we were a family who were engaged with the Kings in Atlanta. We have the Dobbs in Atlanta, which Maynard Jackson was also my cousin as well. Mm-hmm. So, and also to let them know that there were Blacks who were advancing themselves and reaching beyond the borders. My Aunt Clara, she was sent off to the Norcross Presbyterian Church sponsored her back in the 1940s to go off to a missionary missionary convention and come back, and she gave a report to that family that there were the Presbyterian Church in Norcross and the Central Baptist Church developed a relationship back during the early, I guess it'd be in the mid 60s, where you had the first time a white minister coming speaking at a Black church and a Black minister going speaking at a white church. Okay, although it was Presbyterian, but nevertheless, it was to a white congregation. So the main thing is we got a lot of transits that's come into Gwinnett County and into the Peachtree Corners area, and give them an opportunity to learn of the early foundation and the role that many Blacks played in the community at that time.
Okay, well, thank you again for sharing this very rich family history. And Mrs. Neal, I guess we'll get your last comments, and then maybe we'll have a couple of minutes for questions. What do you see as the future, especially with Hooper Remnick? That's where you're doing a lot of work right now.
Okay. One of the main things that I really want to happen with this Hooper Remnick project is that these people who are really working on the project, most of them are people who moved here, know nothing about the communities way back and all that kind of thing, to communicate with these people who were born here, who went to Hooper Remnick. They don't do that, and misinformation is being provided, and I'm upset about that big time. Okay. So I need that to be looked into, and people to communicate with the people who lived here and know what was what, and ask questions of us and not come up with their own whatever they're coming up with, because it's disturbing.
I understand. Well, I think you may have some allies here. I think, since we've had this wonderful discussion. Ron, did we have any questions this evening?
Well, I guess we can close out with a comment here.
Okay.
And it is Deacon Bailey. I just read the article on your family and church in the DeKalb County publication. Loved it. Thank you.
That was actually it's called Up Close and Personal in Lilburn and Tucker. There were two articles, one about Heritage Hall and another about a segregated cemetery that dates back to slavery on the Gwinnett DeKalb border.
Excellent. Looking forward to it. I will look it up. Okay, so
I see Ann's hand is up.
Oh, Ann, okay.
Just a quick question for Perry. Was it very dangerous for your great-grandfather to go to Forsyth to
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
that was why they would, and that was, again, not everybody that evidently, I don't know whether that was part of the Nesbitts that's lived across the river that maybe had some relationship with them, and that's how, but they would come and get him, I think, in the wagon, and they would take him back, and like I said, he would barbecue in the barn or somewhere out back, and then or when daybreak and everything, they would bring him back, back to Pinckneyville, what they call back then, Pinckneyville. Yeah. So, and of course, owning property, but it seems that my family always had a good rapport for the most part with everyone around. Okay. Because I guess we were a Christian family, we were I want to say we easily, but we were easy to get along, and so, but yes, it was dangerous. It was to do that, at this point, even growing up as I was stayed with my grandparents, and I would hear about, people that, you need to be back across the river by the time it got dark, because, that was subject to things that happened to you. So, but yeah, that was, but again, like I say, the community around Norcross there, they had great, and there were other families, a lot of other families that lived out in Pinckneyville. There were several families that lived out there that were sharecroppers at that time, just a lot of them. So, but yeah.
Okay. Ron, do we have any other comments or questions?
No other comments. That's it. I'll just add too, if anybody is interested, the library did do a special presentation on the history of Oscarville, Georgia. So we do have a recorded version on our website. So by all means, check that out.
Well, thank you, Ron.
Thank you very much.
Well, let me, as we close, thank the panelists this evening for their wonderful contributions to this knowledge of Gwinnett County history. So, Mrs. Ann Bender, we thank you. Mrs. Ruby Neal, Deacon Gregory Bailey, and Mr. Perry McClendon, and Dr. Kevin Collins. We want to thank you for participating. And so if there are no other questions, I suppose we can stop here and turn it over to Ron to dismiss us.
So we want to thank everybody for joining us this evening for a really spectacular program, and we're looking forward to the next community conversations.